Artlist.io.
Hey everybody, John E Avocado with the Purpose Your Passion podcast. And as you know, I'm out to make the world a better place. And I think for us to do that, we all need to be better people. So I have taken it upon myself to go around the world and interview individuals that I think are making a difference, not just for themselves, but the people around them. And Lon Davis is absolutely one of these guys. Lon, thanks for being on the show today.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
So let's start off. What is your organization and just a little bit about what you do?
Well, the name of my organization is Walking and Rolling Costumes. And what we do is we build costumes for kids in walkers and wheelchairs all over the nation, free of charge to the families. So we do this through a network of volunteers who are willing to help build the costumes for the kids, and then donations and sponsors to help fund the costumes and keep them free to the families.
Because that's part of this too, is it's not just like a normal costume where some of us could, even for $20, you could order something off Amazon and just have it brought to you. And I talked with KC Cap not too long ago, and he and I had a conversation a whole lot about that identity that sometimes being able to cosplay can do for folks. And so I'm so glad that you can help people reach that same point and put themselves into character. Folks in walkers and wheelchairs just don't have that same access to opportunity because of the complicatedness of your situation.
Correct.
Yeah. Those of us that are bipedal can just throw on a costume and it works with mostly how everything functions in the world. The height of wall switches, the access to outlets, the going up and down steps, all these things that many of us take for granted.
Exactly.
When we put this into the cosplay world, you have to all this complicated by your wheelchair or your walker or whatever assist you would have to get around. Mm-hmm. And so this is where you came in with your son. And remind me your son's name?
My son's name is Reese.
Reese.
And he was born in 2005, and he was actually born with cancer. And so the cancer was on his spine and shoulder, chest, liver, all over. And it ended up crushing his spinal cord, which put him in a wheelchair. He had always been a huge fan of Halloween and wanted to dress up and everything. And so when he got his first wheelchair, when he was 3 years old, he told me that whatever costume he wants, I have to decorate his wheelchair too. And so I was like, okay, no big deal. And he told me he wanted to be Wall-E from the Pixar film Wall-E. And I was like, this is perfect. This is the perfect costume to make on a wheelchair. So I was like, all right, not a problem. So I just figured I'd start building something out of a Dell computer box. And it just happened to fit over his chair and everything. And so we just we made moving arms, the tank treads, everything. And he could control the arms from inside the box, and he loved it and just had a great time with it.
That's a heck of a first build, man. That's a lot of fun. Because I mean, it sounds sometimes, we try to introduce ourselves to new situations. And so a lot of folks might be coming into this and thinking, how would you start at that? But you started just like everything else. What have I got laying around the house? What could I use that I could make something with? And so you are a pretty inventive guy already. Was this something that you had you done a lot of builds or making things like this before? Were you pretty fresh to all this?
I was not a 3D designer or anything. I actually went to college to be a Disney animator. And so, I was used to, sketching and drawing and lots of Mickey drawings and things like that. But when it came to building something in 3D, I had never done that before. And so it was very much a, trial by fire kind of thing. Just see what we had, put it together. Some of the wheels, like on the inside of his tank treads, were Tupperware containers and, Cool Whip containers, things like that, just, painted to look right. But it was all just kind of stuff I had around the house.
So I want to highlight this a little bit because every creator, every inventor, and every cosplayer ourselves, we all start somewhere. And a lot of folks can look at some of your amazing builds now and wonder, wow, that's pretty fantastic. But I want to remind everybody to start it just right here. It started with butter containers and Tupperware in an old cardboard box, and you just had the need, the desire to fulfill that need, and you just took it on yourself to solve that problem. So that's really why I want to highlight you a lot. So now I want to talk about maybe what was the next step then when you so Wall-E was the first one that you did for your son, but now he said something pretty poignant to you that made you take this beyond just what you and he were doing with it, right?
Right. Well, I mean, part of it was not just the costume that we built. He was, even though he was 3 years old, he was in a preschool at the time, And it was his first school. So the thing is he was the only one in a wheelchair at that school. And a lot of the kids didn't really know how to interact with him or how to play with him because he was different. They didn't know any other kids in wheelchairs. And so he was kind of always by himself, and the teachers would try and help, but it was just the kids didn't really know what to do. And you know how schools, they always have the kids, they wear their costumes, they do like the parades around the school and stuff like that. So on Halloween, I brought his Wall-E costume, and he was so proud to be able to show this thing off. And he put it on, and when he went in the classroom, because I had to put it on him like in the hallway outside while the kids were all getting dressed and things, because there just wasn't space. So I put it on him. He goes into the classroom, and all the kids just like swarm him. They are so excited about it. They're like, this is the coolest thing ever. And they're wanting to see, how does it work? How do you do this? How do you do this? And for the first time, he was the most popular kid in class. And that was something that, I didn't really plan on happening. And even, like, after he initially showed them all, and the kids were like, can I try it on and stuff? I was like, well, not really. But it was time for them to go sit in their centers and things like that. And every one of the kids was like, Reese, come sit by me, and come play with me. And for the snacks, it was come sit by me at the table. And so it was like suddenly they didn't see the wheelchair anymore. They just saw the kid. And it was the icebreaker that really kind of just broke that wide open for him in the classroom. And I even looked at the other teachers in the classroom, and we were all kind of shocked by this, because it wasn't something any of us had seen before. It just did that for him. And I was a little concerned, the next day when he'd come back to school without the costume, if they'd still treat him that way. And they did. It was just like, it literally took away all the stigma of having the wheelchair and made him be seen as just another kid. And all the kids, would play with him at recess then and do all the stuff. And so it was something that was really kind of, it stuck out in my head as something unexpected that came out of this costume. And so the next year, let me change that a little bit. After we took lots of pictures and things, and we started sharing it on social media. And the pictures started getting shared all over the place of this wheelchair costume that I built. It made it on the front page of the Kansas City Star, or at least in one of the sections. And, there was just, everyone wanted to see this picture. And we started getting messages from strangers saying, can you build one for my kid? And at the time, we're like, no, we're not even going to attempt this. This is not right. Something to do. And so we just kind of dropped it at the time. But then, the next year when he came up with another costume that he wanted to be Buzz Lightyear, but not just Buzz Lightyear. He was very specific. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, he's Buzz Lightyear, I'll do the spaceship or something. He said, no. I want to be Buzz Lightyear in the claw machine from the first film, with the claw that comes down with all the little green aliens around. I was like, okay.
Heck yeah.
So I built this thing. And like the little prize door in the front was where you put the candy in for Halloween and stuff. So it had all the little green aliens around him and everything. And that one was another one that we took pictures. It started to go viral again, and we started getting more requests. Yeah. And it was just it started snowballing. Every Halloween we got more and more attention. So fast forward to 2014, we had done Iron Man and Captain America and Peter Pan, all these different costumes. And we had been going to Comic Cons, and, he would wear them there instead of just Halloween. And, any chance that, like any kid, anytime he has a chance to wear a costume, he's going to wear a costume.
Heck
so,
yeah.
We'd go to Planet Comic Con, and, all these people would want pictures with him and things like that. And the people that were running Planet Comic Con, they approached us and they said, hey, if we give you guys a booth next year, would you guys be willing to showcase all your costumes? Because you come every year and you do these amazing wheelchair costumes. We're like, yeah, sure, we'd love to. And so over the course of that year, from 2014 to 2015, we started thinking about it more. And we were thinking, if we're actually going to showcase these costumes, maybe we need to do more than just show what we can do. Maybe there's a way that we can actually, we've had all these requests coming to us. Maybe there is something to it, and we can find a way to make this work. But we also knew that any family with a child with special needs doesn't have a lot of income to buy a costume like this, because they do start to get more and more expensive. Obviously, the Wall-E one was pretty, pretty inexpensive. It was, you know, stuff I had laying around the house. But as you look at some of our more recent costumes, you know, they get up there in price,
which are fantastic. I can't get people to go look at them enough. And we'll talk about some more of those here in a minute.
Sure.
And I'll throw some pictures up for the podcast. But folks, go and check it out. We'll flash up what the site is to go check out some of all the walkinenrollin.org and what they're doing over there.
Yep.
There's some amazing pictures of. I saw some concept art and everything.
Yeah.
So go ahead. So
No
you got the stories.
So we decided that if we're going to do this and we're going to showcase the costumes, we need to find a way to make them free for the families. Mm-hmm. And so we brainstormed it, you know, my wife and I and Reese, and we were trying to figure out what to do. And we figured, let's try donations. Let's see if it works, if we can raise enough money. We figured that the costumes were going to cost about $250 a piece. Mm-hmm. And so we figured, let's see if we can raise $1,000 and build 4 costumes. And so that was our goal. And Planet Comic Con, you know, we set up the booth. We had all of our past costumes. We even built a special one that year just for Planet Comic Con. And when the doors opened, one of the very first people that came through the door was an older gentleman in a wheelchair. And he came right up to our booth. We just happened to be one of the first ones that he could see from the entrance. He came right up to our booth and he was looking at everything. He goes, "What is it that you guys do?" We said, "Well, we build costumes for kids in wheelchairs." And that was about as far as I got. And he just stopped. He pulled out his wallet and he put a $100 bill in our donation tub. And all he said was, "I just wish there was something like this when I was a kid." And he turned and rolled away. I have no idea who the guy was. I never saw him again. But after that moment, we just kind of looked at each other and were like, there might actually be something here. And, you know, that Planet Comic Con, that first year that we debuted and kind of said everything about it, we had about 75 people sign up as volunteers. And we raised, you know, a few $100s just to try and get us started.
Oh, that is fantastic. And so now we talk about, you say like this number 250, and that was the time then. I'm not sure what your number sets now, but this 250, I mean, this is just in parts and material. This isn't to pay somebody the time and labor. No. I mean, that's still all that labor still love. That's $250 just in materials to make a nice costume for somebody's wheelchair. Mm-hmm. So you got your first volunteer to go ahead and donate to you right away, because everybody, oftentimes when you try to put an idea like this out to the world, you know, it's much like a child on its own. You raise this, you bring it up out of the ground, and you put it out in the world and hope it kind of survives on its own, you know, without too much help from you, because as a parent, you know, you can't be there forever. These things have to exist on their own. And so that moment where you got somebody out there to really grab a hold of you, I mean, so pinnacle, so defining for you guys. So not only did you take these first few donations from individuals, now you've kind of stepped this up now, and you drive for donations through companies and even a larger intent. Do you have a yearly fund drive or anything that you do for yourself outside of Planet Comic Con?
We typically, COVID has kind of put a hiatus on it, but we typically have a big giant reveal party in October. Okay. We try and reveal, because obviously Halloween is our biggest season. Even though we build them year round, we, you know, all the kids want them for Halloween, and most of the volunteers will come out and say, you know, about August, they want to come help build a costume. So we do a big push there in September to try and get all the costumes done. And then around the middle of October, usually around October 15th, we do a big party. And we've done it where sometimes we've revealed, I think when we first started, we revealed 3 costumes in one day. And the last year, 2019, we revealed 13 costumes in one day. We were doing like every half hour, we were doing a costume reveal. And, you know, we have all these people come out. We have professional photographers there that will take photos of the kids in their costume, you know, just so the parents have something to you know, a great shot of it. You know, with backdrops and everything. Then we also have MCs that come and host the event. We do the whole thing where the costume is under a sheet. Big crowd is there for the family, and this is the very first time that the family see the costume is when we pull that sheet off. And so, you know, we do the big countdown and everything. We pull the sheet off, And the reactions are across the board. On you have some kids that are just so excited, they're happy and they want the costume on them right now. the parents who are crying because they can't believe that this is for their child. And then we even have the rarer occasions, which are always kind of funny to me, where we pull the sheet off and the child starts sobbing. We're like, what did we do wrong? And the child didn't realize that's still their chair. They thought that we like replaced their chair, and they see their chair. It's like, you stole my chair. It's like, no, it's still here. So we have to like almost take the costume apart so they can see that it's their chair and then put it back together. But you never know what's going to happen. And the kids are always very excited. Once they finally get in the costume, they get to start driving around and everybody wants to take their photo with them. They're being treated like a celebrity, and they really enjoy it.
What a personalized moment. Because that's something that a lot of us don't think about. It's too much. I mean, we carry around our phone in our pockets, or we carry around the clothes that we wear all the time. We take a lot of pride in the different clothes that we wear, the way we show ourselves off to folks. We bling out our phones. We bling out our cars. For folks that are often so associated with this piece of machinery, to be able to kind of do something more with it, to upscale it, to
Right.
sometimes either hide it or to elevate what it is really, I mean, it seems to many of us who don't have to look for the opportunity because it's just presented to us every day. Right. It's often easy for us to overlook it. So I can't commend you, not just for yourself and your son, enough for what you do for everybody else that's associated with your organization. So let's talk now. So you go to Planet Comic-Con all the time. And so Chris and Jim and all those folks at the convention are such great people.
Yes,
I mean, they always, they're looking out for the community so much. I mean, that's one of my favorite reasons to be involved with Planet Comic-Con, is that community outreach that they have.
Absolutely.
So when they got with you and you had your first booth, right? And you had a bunch of folks come up. Now every year you also do a reveal at Planet Comic-Con, right? For someone?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
We started that in 2017. Actually, when we did a lot of changes in 2017. We actually started partnering with high schools as building these costumes as part of their STEM program. And so they learn so much about inclusion, about what it's like to be in a wheelchair, and to actually have the kid come into the class to where the students, they do all the measurements, they do all the photographs, they do everything. The students, they don't think of this as like a school project when they start building these costumes. They think of it as, I am building something for this child and I have to make it right. I can't phone this in. And the teachers have even commented that the students get so involved in these wheelchair costumes that on their own, they're saying, okay, who can come in tonight after school? Who can come in on Saturday? Who can come in on Sunday? Because we got to get this done. We're doing the reveal on Saturday, and we were not ready yet. And so they take it upon themselves because they want to do such a great job. And so in 2017 was the first year that we had a school build a costume for us. And so we actually had them reveal it at Planet Comic-Con. It was a little boy named Davey, and he wanted a Star Wars costume. And so they had him come in. All he said was a Star Wars costume, so it was kind of vague. And so they had up on the board like 10 different vehicles that they thought they could build for his wheelchair. And he looked at them all and he picked the one he wanted. And they're like, okay, that's what we're building. And so they got all the measurements. They built the costume, and it was a TIE fighter. TIE interdictor was a very specific TIE fighter that he wanted. Yeah. And
your cosplay, it's very, you got to have it right. You got to have it right.
You got to be right on that. So yeah, it was the TIE interdictor. And the cool thing was that was the year that Planet Comic-Con had Spencer Wilding there as one of their celebrity guests. And Spencer Wilding played Darth Vader in Rogue One. And so he got to help with the reveal for Davey. And so he was there on stage with us. And, it was the students that built the costume, they were kind of impressed, that they got to hang out with Darth Vader. And one of the things that Davey said before the reveal, I had asked him, a week or so before, I said, is there anybody that you want to meet? He goes, I want to meet Darth Vader. It's like, okay. And so backstage before the reveal, Davey was just kind of sitting there in his chair, just kind of waiting for our turn to go up on stage. And this big guy comes and gets down next to him and just starts talking to him. And they talk for like 5 or 10 minutes. And finally we were like, Davey, do you know who that is? He's like, no. He goes, that's Darth Vader. He played Darth Vader in in the movie. And Davey was just blown away. He was shocked and couldn't believe he had just been spending 10 minutes talking to Darth Vader. And Spencer was so nice about the whole thing. I mean, he posed for every picture. You know, he spent so much time with the students, and really went out of his way to make it a special event for Davey. And he thanked us for making this costume. He goes, this is amazing. I love this. And so he got to go up there, and Davey gave his best Darth Vader impression for him and things like that. But they reveal the costume, and Davey was just blown away. He loved it. He couldn't wait to get in it. And the funny thing was where we revealed it was downstairs, so we had to go upstairs to the convention floor. So he couldn't even wear it right there. He had to get him in an elevator, get upstairs, put it on him, and he was just ready to go. He was driving around all over the place. He loved it. So that was our first time with the students. And the funny thing was when the students revealed it, half the students started crying, and they didn't know why. And it was just because they had done something that meant so much to someone else. And it was an emotion that they were not prepared for. And it was something that, it meant so much to them that some of the kids from that class, they were at Olathe Northwest High School. They have now gone on to college, and they have continued working with us, building costumes at their college, because of the impact it had on them in high school. And so, it's not something where people just do it once and then they're done. It stays with them, and the experience is something that they'll never forget.
Absolutely. And so this is so much, Lon, I wanted to talk to you and express what you do for everybody, to everyone, because this project that started off with you and your son, by taking it outside of you, by sharing what you discovered for yourselves and sharing that with others. You affected the other folks that had the same challenges that you did, and then bringing these kids in, bringing other people in. My motto is to purpose your passion. I know that you can do anything if you can purpose the passion that you have, and there's all sorts of ways for us to align our passions with needs, or to find a need and fit our passion to it. And so folks just need to put themselves out there and provide opportunities for others to connect with them. Oftentimes we have an idea like this, and we're so afraid to share it with somebody else because we're concerned about how others might reflect upon us, or what we're trying to do, or might not recognize or understand how we're trying to reach out to other people. And so to find stories like yours, Lon, who because they're not always so, and I'm sure there's been challenges to go along with this, but it's been a bit of a Cinderella story to how some of this kind of has lined up for you. Other folks have a little bit more of a challenge sometimes to get through that. And that ideation of purposing your passion, taking something that you feel so strongly about it and putting it to use. You shared that drive and that desire with those high school students. What you're talking about, them showing up early and coming late and doing it all on their own. It wasn't just somebody trying to fill a niche, or filling in a square or checking a box. Right. It was you become invested in this, in what it is. And so that was part of why I really wanted to bring you on the show and call out what you did, because I can't commend you enough. When I talk about trying to make the world a better place, Lon, you're a guy that's just doing it, and it doesn't have to take even all this intention or direction. It just takes us being human beings and connecting with others, and folks will connect with us, and it works out. So thank you, Lon.
No problem. Thank you.
I appreciate you and the total outreach of what you have here. Now I want to go back to the builds here just a minute, because we touched on it just a little bit. As cosplayers, we know we got to have this just right. Now these kids can be a hell of a critic sometimes, right? Especially when you're doing something for it. You want to pull off your best work for these guys. Right. So tell me, we always like a good story. So is there a build that has a good story for you that was a challenge that you figured out, or that you had to say, no, can we do it a different way? I can tell you, I have so many stories. Every child has their own story, and it's such a wonderful thing to be able to be a part of those stories. There are some stories that are very difficult to build. The costumes are built, and then we have some that are just kind of a celebration for the families.
We had a couple girls in 2019 that they were sisters, but they both happened to be in wheelchairs, and they were going on their Make-A-Wish to Disney World, and they wanted Star Wars costumes so that they could go to the new Galaxy's Edge and wear their costumes in the park. And I think it was the first costumes we ever built specifically to go to Disney World. And it was an incredible challenge because Disney World has very specific measurements on what you can bring into the park. And so, there is a maximum width and maximum length of the costume, or of the wheelchair that can go in. And so we had to design these two costumes to fit in a very small box. And the problem was these two girls picked the longest costumes that you could have for Star Wars. One of them wanted to be Princess Leia from Return of the Jedi on the speeder bike. So it has that long nose. And then the other one wanted to be Rey from Episode 7 with that speeder that she drives.
The tall one, yeah.
The tall, long one.
Yeah.
And so we had to build these costumes, and it was really hard because we try and make them, obviously we can't make them screen accurate because we're building them on a wheelchair. So there's some artistic license to them. But these are two costumes that are meant to be long, and we had to squish them down to fit into this little box. When we were building them, we took tape and put it down on the ground into the square that we had for Walt Disney World. We were like, oh, that's plenty of space. We can do a lot with that. Then you put the wheelchair in it and you realize, well, there's about 90% of the space.
Right.
And so we ended up doing it. We built the costumes, but I always felt like those were not our best work, only because if it weren't for that restriction, we would have done a much better job.
Yeah,
but
you could have brought it if you'd had more room.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was one that.
So we're talking about bringing it. I'm going to bring up one that's pretty famous. If folks look around, they're going to find this one for sure. Now, your Wally was one of the first ones, so it's pretty popular. And when I went around looking for you, it's all over the place too.
Yep.
But your Trons, right? The two, those ones, because they're so flashy and they look so good, and you guys got some really good shots of them, and so they travel really well across the inner space because they look so amazing. But let's talk about a little bit of that progression of those builds, because you talked about at the beginning here, we're talking about Tupperware and old cardboard box to do it for yourself. Now that you're doing this for other folks, I mean, not that we elevate it beyond, but you elevate it so that you can create a product or a performance for somebody that's worthwhile to what their expectation or their need should be, right? We don't want to shortchange anybody in any way.
Sure.
So the Tron bikes. So you the first one, the articulation on Wally, that was just mechanical, right? He could just kind of move the arms to move Wally's arms around from inside. Now the Tron bikes, and you've built two of these, right? Because you have a second son, right? We'll get to that in a minute too. I want to hear this story, because this is why I'm bringing the Tron bikes up here, because we got some sibling rivalry going on here just a little bit. We can't get too jealous. So the Tron bikes, I'm going to call them out because they got elevated a little bit. There's some lighting on them. Was there sound to go with those two?
Yeah, they both played the Tron 2 soundtrack. And so they, Daft Punk, I guess, had their soundtrack, blasting through it. And then they had remote controls on the inside of each of the light cycles so that they could change the color of the light cycle. So if one of them wanted to have the orange or yellow and the other one wanted blue, they could do that. My oldest son, Reese, he always wanted to be the blue one. So he wanted to drive around with that one. My youngest son, however, found out that the remote has a whole lot of different settings. And his favorite settings was the strobe rainbow. Yes. And so it was just like every color flashing like crazy. And he would just drive around grinning from ear to ear going, this is my light cycle.
It's every color.
And, that's the thing, the kids should be able to kind of, tailor it to themselves, however they want to do it. Yes, we could have made it to where it only is in blue and this one is only in yellow, but what fun is that when the child can actually have some customizability to it and can edit it themselves?
And so we saw it playing at Comic-Con. Was it last year you debuted the Mandalorian?
This year was well, kind of. We debuted it last year, and the Mandalorian Razor Crest. And we, like in true cosplay form, we finished it the night before Planet Comic Con. So the first time, we put the whole thing together, and of course, we're building these in our garage. The ones for my kids are built in our garage, and the kids are working on them after school and stuff like that. And so we had it, all propped up in our garage and had it in parts. We were working on different parts in different sections of the garage. And so we put the whole thing together. Actually, I think the first time it was completely put together was in Planet Comic Con. Because, once we have to load it in the car to get it there. And so it's all in pieces then. We put it all together, and it was back heavy because all those giant engines are behind the seat. Mm-hmm. And so it would tip over backwards. And so we had to rapidly come up with something like when my son was not in it, to hold it up. And so we did this. We had it, we had a sawhorse in the background with a sheet over it, kind of covering it, don't look at that. Kind of keep the costume from tipping over. And then when my son was in the costume, he had to lean forward the whole time, because if he sat back in his seat, it would tip over. So I had to walk behind him the whole time he went around, ready to catch it in case he just, happened to lean back a little bit. And so we debuted that one in Planet Comic Con 2021. And so as soon as that one was over, it was for my youngest son. His name is Callan. And Callan said he did not like it because he always felt like he was about to tip over, and it was very nerve-wracking for him. So I said, we'll fix it. And so we took the engines apart. We completely rebuilt the engines from scratch, made them much lighter, and redesigned the whole thing. I think it looks much better now.
It looks amazing.
And we did a lot of battle damage on it so that it kind of to reduce some weight. And so the one that we debuted this year at Planet Comic Con 2022 is half old, half new, but it stands up. Now it will still tip back when no one is in the chair. So we do have some bricks under the back of it to kind of hold it in place when it's just in our booth. But when my son is in it, it doesn't tip back anymore. So he's much more comfortable with it. He can sit back in his chair and not worry about falling over.
So let me talk on that just a second. So now Reese is the oldest son, and he's the one who's wheelchair bound. And your youngest son, what was his name again?
Callan,
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but Callan jumps around on these things like a monkey, man. He goes from one to the next, driving around, pushing on buttons. When I was talking to him at the show, I'm like, hey, would you show me? He's like, boop, 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 boop. He was going to town on this. So it's so much fun for me to see that although he's used to it in the house. You talked about that earlier when we started to talk about the wheelchair being almost an impedance between you and another child, the normalization of that childhood as a kid in school. Now, your youngest son, you haven't had grown up with all these wheelchairs around and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something you think twice about. This is just something else to crawl on, climb on, or mess with. So the two of them, so you had to build the second Tron because Reese just couldn't have a Tron wheelchair amazing cosplay on his own. You've got the second kid. You can't just put him in an outfit and send him out trick-or-treating, can you? He's like, what do I get to drive, right?
He saw us building all these when we debuted debuted Walk and Roll in Costumes in 2015, my youngest son was 2.5. And so it wasn't that big of a deal for him at that point. But we've gone to many Comic Cons and shows, and he started seeing Reese get these really cool costumes. And he finally, I don't remember what age he was. It was probably 4 or 5. And he finally just kind of walked up to us in the garage while we were working on a costume. And he just, with the saddest look on his face, he's like, when do I get a costume? And I was like, oh my God. And so we immediately decided we have to build one for him that he can use at trade shows, like when we go to Comic Cons and things like that, so that he can, we have another model then that can show off these costumes. Yeah. And so he's using Reese's old wheelchairs from when Reese was that age. And because we have all of them. Mm-hmm. And so we asked him, what does he want as his first wheelchair costume? And he was really into Toy Story, and he wanted the Pizza Planet truck. And so we built him the Pizza Planet truck, and he was 5 when we debuted that one. And the little kid came up with the most ingenious idea, and I couldn't believe it. Here he is, we're building this Pizza Planet truck. We're going to be at Planet Comic Con. And he says, I have an idea for a fundraiser for Walk and Roll in Costumes. It's like, okay, what do you got? He says, on Friday, I want to go around to all the booths and take pizza orders from people to have pizza delivered to them in a Pizza Planet truck on Saturday. This kid raised more money than we did at our booth. And he had a blast. I don't know that the pizza place was very happy with us, because we would go in there and say, okay, we need 19 sausage pizzas. We need all these different things. And then he would have them stacked in his Pizza Planet truck, and he would drive to each of these booths, give them their pizza, and they would tip him. And we said, any tips you get, you get to keep. So he was into that. He bought a lot of Legos that year with his tips.
Heck yeah.
So, but yeah, he came up with that idea and wanted that costume, and he used that for quite a while. But now he's grown, and he grew out of that wheelchair. And so he's on to other wheelchairs. We built our very first, and as far as I know, only 2-person 2-wheelchair costume. We did that one in 2018, I think. It was for the Star Wars animated show, Rebels. And we did the Ghost, which was the big ship that they flew. And it was 9 feet by 9 feet. Reese drove it in front, and Callan was right behind him in a second wheelchair, and he could spin around and do the gunner on top.
Oh, man.
We built that one and debuted it at Planet Comic Con, and had pictures of it, put it on social media, and it went viral. And we had Mark Hamill commenting on it. All the cast from Rebels were commenting on it. So yeah, it made the rounds.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're escalating your builds each year now. So as an engineer and designer, I know the foibles you can run into when you keep one upping yourself.
Yes.
So what's your plan? How are you going? What's your next step with this? You've made some amazing cosplays. Are you looking to make more cosplays, or do you want to elevate the level of the cosplay?
On the actual costumes, we always try and come up with new techniques. The costumes that I typically build for my kids, Reese is actually he's going to be going to college soon, and he wants to go into engineering. So he is using what he has learned. And so he is helping design these costumes. And we always try and use the costumes I build for my kids as practice grounds for new techniques and new ideas that we come up with. And then if they work, we implement them on other kids' costumes. But usually when we're building costumes for other kids, we're using techniques that we know work, and we're comfortable doing that and sending it to another family to use. One of the techniques that Reese is working on right now, it's for a new costume he's building today. He wants to design a costume where even while he's in his wheelchair, he can get in the costume, put it all on all by himself without my assistance. And that's something that we've never been able to do before. We've attempted it before. We tried it with the Ghostbusters Ecto 1 that we did last year, and it didn't quite work. We were trying it on his costume, didn't work. So we're going to try. He came up with a new technique, and so he is building that right now, and we're going to see if it happens.
Wow, heck yeah. So now your focus right now is our kids, and I don't want to ask you to step outside of your bounds, but my question is there so many adults, because kids in wheelchairs grow up to be adults in wheelchairs,
right?
What kind of interaction do you have with adults cosplayers in wheelchairs and things like that? A lot of them might see what you're doing with them, and I'm glad that you brought up this idea of Reese and trying to and being able to dress himself in his costume. Have you had adults reach out to you or want to talk
Absolutely.
to you or address you about how they can build or do this for themselves?
Yes. We've had quite a few adults. Every Halloween, we have plenty of adults that reach out to us. Unfortunately, because of our 501c3 nonprofit status that is designed specifically for kids, we can't actually build any for adults, but that doesn't mean that we can't help them. We have always set up this company and everything that we do as open source, basically. We don't, nothing that we do is copyrighted, protected, there's no patents or anything. We want to share it all because we want people to be able to do this on their own. We purposely design our costumes that, even though they may look fantastic and look, incredible on how to build them, they're actually quite simple. And we do that on purpose. We want the materials to be accessible. We want them to be things that anyone who wants to try it themselves can reach out to us, and we'll tell you exactly how we did it. We take pictures throughout the build process. We try to. Sometimes we get a little ahead of ourselves, but we try and document everything. And we even have lessons that we have designed that they're generic in the sense that if you're building a car, if you want to build a Batmobile, Ecto-1, a fire truck, any type of vehicle, here's some plans that will get you started. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you attach it to the wheelchair. Here's different techniques. And then if you want to build something organic like a horse or an animal, here's another build that you can use. It won't have measurements and stuff because depending on the size of the wheelchair, everything's going to be different, but it at least shows you here's how to make it work. And we will share that with anyone that wants them. And it's just because we don't want the whole purpose of this was never to make money. I mean, we give these away for free. So we don't want to make it to where family, I'm kind of going over myself here. We have so many requests for the kids' costumes that we can't make them all. Yes. And so we want families that want to attempt it. We will help them. We'll give them anything that they need in order to get started. And we have had many families that said, "Hey, I loved the X-Wing fighter that you did for your son. Can you tell me how you did that?" And I'll send them the plans, whatever I can. And they will then send us photos back later saying, here's how it came out. And it's like, that's what we want to do. We don't want to make this, proprietary to us or anything. We want people to feel comfortable enough to try it themselves. And, that's why we also work with schools. We work with middle schools, high schools, and colleges, doing it as part of their STEM program. And so these costumes need to be something attainable, even at a middle school level. And yes, if you have someone who has incredible artistic ability and they're into airbrushing and everything, yes, you can make much more detail and do more of that type of stuff. But you can also do it with a can of spray paint and color the whole thing gray or whatever color the vehicle is, and it will still work. It's just, it's a matter of what you have available to you.
So that I would like to speak to that a little bit. Your guys' builds and your designs are so accessible because it's materials people can get a hold of cheaply and easily, things for you to easily work with, like PVC or zip ties, stuff that you can get on and off the equipment so that you don't have to make a permanent attachment,
right,
or some sort of a hard fix to get this to attach to it. These all need to be detachable, and many of these need to be able to break down, for travel to and from locations. Especially if you're going to take it to a convention, you either got to get it in the car or on a plane or whatever you're doing. Right. So you got to be able to transport this thing to and from where you want to display it. Although we all would like to ride around in our cosplays all day long, So even as a cosplayer, I get to call out some privilege there. I get to get dressed at home and then just show up. Right. I might have to throw my wings on or whatever when I get out of the car, or put a tail on myself. But having to put yourself into a whole costume into your entire outfit, that's a whole nother level right there.
Right.
So I want to commend you guys on your organization's accessibility to what you're trying to do. When you talk about and I want to call this out for folks that will be watching, this truly is a process that you have opened up so people can get in contact with you.
Yes.
Now the organization Walking and Rolling, you do give out costumes, and there's a method on the website for people to reach out to you to request a costume for themselves. And then there's a selection process, and somehow
Mhm.
you'll have information about how they can get a hold of you and when all that would be for folks that would be interested in one. But then there's also a section on there for access to plans, to pre-existing builds, and how to contact you to ask for more information or even help
Right.
with those photos. I saw all that on there. And then there's one other thing I saw on there that I thought was very interesting. These coloring pages, these like prototyping pages, where you would
Yes.
have just so there's some terminology we're talking here a little bit about. You refer to the vessel, right, as the part that goes around the chair, right, and then you refer to the.
Yeah.
How do you, what's this terminology when folks go to your website? What are they going to be looking at?
Well, okay, you have the wheelchair itself, and then what we typically build on top of that is what we refer to as a master frame. And a master frame is a smaller frame that can be on the chair longer term. For an example of that would be if your child is going to school and they're going to take the costume, you can put the master frame on the kid's chair before they go to school that morning, and it's not going to interfere with them getting around the classroom or anything like that, going to the bathroom, none of that. But it has attachment points on that master frame. And so the master frame is usually, zip tied and locked down to the actual wheelchair. Then the costume itself actually attaches to the master frame. It doesn't actually attach to the chair. So that way it can go on and off very quickly and very easily. And one of the main ways that we do that is gravity. We build the master frame with poles going vertical. And so then the costume itself slides down over those poles, and then gravity holds it in place.
Right.
And so, and the costume, it may not be one giant costume that goes around the whole chair. We've built many costumes where they're in pieces. So you have the front part will attach, then you got the back part that will attach. And then we may even have side panels that Velcro on to it to connect the front and back, so that it's much easier to transport, to store. I mean, you don't want to have something that's huge and you're going to do that in your house.
Yeah. Have the size of a small car.
Yeah, we always try and make it attainable for the family to be able to transport, to use, because I mean these kids, they don't want to get the costume. I mean, one thing that my son always told me about was and it's something I didn't think of until he said it, but when we tell a child that, hey, you have been selected, we are building you a costume, let's get more details, let's find out what exactly do you want. We send them sketches of here's what we're thinking, what do you like. And these kids are excited. They have this drawing, they're like, this is what I'm getting, I'm so excited about it. That they're going to school and they're telling all their friends, I'm getting this costume. They're showing them the picture. They are excited about what they're getting. This is something new to them. And if we can't build a costume that can then go to school with them, we've completely alienated them, which is the exact opposite of the whole purpose of our company. And so, it has to be transportable and able to go to school with them, or go to grandma and grandpa's house, or to church, or wherever they want to take the costume. It has to be able to go there. And so that's just, something that we always take into consideration when we say that a family, that we've chosen a family and they're getting a costume. We do always talk to the parents, like, what kind of car do you drive? What kind of space do you have? Where do you plan on storing it? Where, we want all of that information before we even start sketching out a design, because that drastically changes how the costume is going to look. We have built, there's quite a few costumes that we've built multiple times. We had one year where we built Moana's boat for two different girls, and they were built at the same year, but one of them, they had like a huge truck to take it because the girl was in a motorized wheelchair. And so this costume was huge, and it fit, and they loved it. It was a ginormous costume. But the other girl, she did not have a lot of space. And so we had to design a very different costume that could break down into, I think it had to fit in the trunk of a car. And so it really had to come apart. And so we take all of that into consideration before we start building. I mean, these are not cookie cutter costumes where, oh, you want a Moana costume? Here you go. We've already built this before. This will work. It's every single costume is custom made for the child, because every child's wheelchair is custom made for them, and their situation with their family, their vehicle, it's all different. So we never know what challenges, even if it's a costume we built 5 times before, it's still going to be new and different for us.
So let me ask you about a few of those challenges. So as you've elevated your cosplays or your costumes with these folks, you know, your son is working on one for himself here. What's the next step here? Do you have are you going to build a walker? Are you going to build a stand up? What's your next technical, as another engineer, I want to ask you, what's your next technical build challenge?
We built one not too long ago when the first Ant-Man came out, where when my son would drive, the legs of the ant would walk. So like each leg moved independently. And my son, that was his favorite costume that we ever built. And it was, you know, back when the first movie came out. Well, with the third Ant-Man movie coming out next year, he wants to revisit that costume. He goes, I want to make it better. I want to, the legs moved, but I think we can do better. And so he wants to revisit that and figure out how to make it look better, how it moves better. Just, you know, it's kind of a challenge to himself, I think, to figure out a better way of making that look good.
Well, you're always going to bring it out and do one more thing to it. You talk about you know, as it goes for almost all cosplay conventions, you're usually working on that cosplay the night before, even. Absolutely. Sometimes putting those final touches on, bringing that last detail together. So I want to ask you about that. Now, you sent out quite a few costumes over the few years, and you've built quite a few for yourself. How many of these have you put into competition? Do you get your costumes up on stage?
Usually not, because and I would love to. I'd love to enter our costumes in contests, but because when we go to Comic Cons and things like that, they usually give us a booth for free. As kind of a featured guest, because we're a nonprofit, and you know they want us there. So when they give us a booth for free, we are disqualified from the costume contest.
Oh, are you? That's a bummer.
Yeah. So
Reese will have to disassociate himself just enough to make that happen.
We've been to a couple contests where we were able to still compete, and we have come in first place.
Well, that's fantastic, because as you know, with what we do at 3DHQ, we get to go around, we scan cosplayers all over the world with some amazing builds. Yeah. And so sometimes we see bipedal folks using mechanical supplementation to pull off these cosplays. So I'm telling you what, man, to see a guy who already has the mechanical supplementation for his transportation to integrate that as part of his cosplay, I think that belongs right up on stage with that guy in the giant Warhammer suit that's got servos and fans and everything else going on it. I love those builds as well. Oh, yeah. But I think that, you know, sometimes some folks, you know, might wonder how those interactions might happen. But I'm telling you, the work that you do and the people that you perform for, man, this fits right in line with what this cosplay competition already is. So that's good to see you guys getting out there a little bit.
Well, and you know, you talk about those big costumes like the Warhammer thing. You know, when you look at those, you have to remember that a lot of those costumes, you know, they attach to the person's arms, to their shoulders, to their waist, and they rarely have to think about supporting the costume. The human themselves are the framework for the costume, and that's something that we have to think differently about whenever we build our costumes. Is, you know, ours they don't just attach to the wheelchair. They have a skeleton inside of them that keeps them in the form that they are. One of the things that we have always made sure that we adhere to, we have 3 rules whenever we build a costume. And one of the rules is that it has to fit through a doorway. I learned that on the Wall-E costume. It was the very first costume, and I made it 6 inches too wide. And so luckily, we did do a test at my son's pediatrician office the week before he was taking it to school. And so he couldn't get into any of the pediatrician, little rooms. And so before he went to school, I had to cut the tank treads in half all the way around. But then it fit through a doorway. So we made that rule that said every costume has to fit through a doorway. The other rule is it has to be lightweight because, these kids, I would say 95% of the costumes we have built are for manual wheelchairs, not motorized. And so we have to make sure, these kids are pushing all this weight. And so everything that we use has to be very lightweight. That's why we don't typically use a lot of wood. It's usually PVC and thin plastic in order to make the costume. And then the final rule is that the kids have to be able to get in and out of it very quickly in case they need to go to the bathroom or something. If it takes the parents 20 minutes to put the costume on and take it off, we've lost it. It needs to be something very easily can get the child in and out. And so those are the only three rules that we make sure that we meet. And those do limit some of the design, but it's also finding creative ways around it. We have like the Razor Crest that we were talking about. Its engines are huge and on the side, so it obviously does not fit through a door, but we designed it to where each engine is completely self-contained with all the wiring and lights and batteries and everything. So there are two little knobs that you can unscrew and an engine comes completely off. And so you can take those off, go through a doorway, put them back on. It literally takes about 5 seconds and they're through the doorway.
I'd say so. We'll throw some pictures up. We got to throw the Razor Crest into our scanner at 3DHQ, and we scanned it.
It didn't fit,
and it didn't fit. So we had to. So like some of these costumes, we talked about those Warhammer guys. Sometimes these costumes are so, especially these folks that are doing these drywall stilts and things like that.
Yeah,
these guys in these costumes get so large. We have to, just like they do, to get in and out of doorways. We have to disassemble them and reassemble them inside the booth to get a good capture of them. But we got your Razor Crest in there, and the sucker just fit. And we scanned that puppy up, and I'm going to tell you what, it looks pretty good. I was pretty impressed with how good of a scan we got on it. So we'll throw some of those images up, and we'll maybe throw some up of us taking it apart and putting it together. I think we got a few pictures of those, so that'll be pretty fun too. So, but it's an absolutely amazing build that you get. The Razor Crest sure is, and the accessibility to get in and out of it, how good it looks as a costume itself. I mean, it is. If when folks go and see this, I mean, we talk about things being something kind of chibied or pop arted because it doesn't fit with the same size of functionality. You got to kind of make these things smaller so they fit inside places, including at a convention, getting around folks and through all those people and those lines. So this Razor Crest, I mean, it is spot on how good it looks. The engines look absolutely fantastic. The amount of detail and the coloration and the lights and everything that go with it. All the buttons that you've got inside of the cockpit and the console, and so many of them are functional. They turn on music and lights and sound and all sorts of stuff, have controls over the accessibility of the rest of the vehicle. I mean, it's truly fantastic build, Lon. I mean, I can't say how impressed I am with what you did for your son there. Pretty darn proud. You should be.
Yeah.
So, so we're going to send folks that way. I want to close with one more thing here, because I could talk to you all day about this, Lon. And the thing that I wanted to get down was purpose in your passion. You started off doing that for yourself. You had a need and you had a passion to solve that problem, and so you put the two together. You purposed it and you found an answer. The other thing I really want to highlight about what you talked with all the individuals that you've talked with, that you've interacted with through this organization, through yourself, through your son. And the one is that the defining statement that comes to me again and again is that doing good does good for you. Everything from these high school kids to yourself, to doing it for your kid, somebody doing it for themselves, somebody doing it for somebody else. When you tap into doing good things for other people, it's always good for you. I mean, you don't always see what it is, but man, oh man, I can't stress that enough. So thank you, Lon, for helping being an unwitting example of that, because oftentimes, the heroes in the world aren't ever somebody that puts on the cape and goes and does it. It's just the guy that went in the burning building that did the thing that needed to be done. Right. And you, Lon, are one of these everyday heroes. You're out there doing the thing that needs to be done. And you're showing other folks, not just that you can do it, but that they too can do it, which is where I really want to commend and compliment you. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the submission. Folks can get a hold of you through the walkingandrolling.org. Is it correct?
walkingrolling.org.
Walkingrolling.org, excuse me.
Mhm.
We'll get that down below so folks can link to you and get connected. And of course, you always take donations. You take private donations because you're a 501c, right? You take private donations, and you also work with companies and corporations who may want to help sponsor or donate to your organization as well.
Correct.
And the best way for somebody to request a costume is just to get onto the website and contact you that way. How soon, if somebody would like a costume in time for Halloween, how soon should they put in a submission? What's your date for that?
The earlier the better,
Okay.
because we will start putting teams together as to what costumes they can build. And it's not just a local thing. We build costumes for kids all over the nation, from Florida to Hawaii, and that's because we have a network of volunteers all over the nation as well who have signed up on our website to help out in any way they can. And so whenever we have someone, like let's say from Denver, Colorado, who signs up for a costume, I'll look on my network of volunteers and find volunteers in the Denver area and pair them up so that they can build the costume for them. So don't think that you have to be from the Kansas City area in order to get a costume. We'll build them. We will even ship them if we don't have people in the area. So you can do that. And I seem to have lost track on where that question was going.
That's all right. People want to, so folks who would want a costume can contact you, and they want to get a hold of you. The sooner the better.
Sooner the better. So, the cutoff is, we usually cut off August 1st. It normally takes us about 3 months to build a costume, roughly 150 man hours. Because of Halloween, we will try and do a workshop in the Kansas City area in September, and we will build 7 costumes in one weekend.
Yeah.
And so we'll have like 40 to 50 people show up to the workshop, and we'll literally, my son and I just bounce around from team to team trying to help them all. We teach people how to build costumes. We have a lot of people who come back every single year to build. And so, the earlier you can get the request in, I'm not saying that guarantees you'll get a costume. We can't guarantee any request will get a costume. We have some people that have been on the waiting list for quite a while, and it always pains me when I have to tell people that we can't build it for them this Halloween, but it happens. We have so many requests that come in. If you are interested and think you might want to build one for one of these kids, there is even the list of all the kids on the waiting list is on our website as well. And so you can see that it will just give the kid's first name, their age, what city and state they're in, and what they want to be for Halloween. And so you can kind of look through there and say, oh, well, that one's not too far from me. They want a fire truck. I can do that. And, we can pair you up that way as well.
That was going to be my next question. So folks who would like to volunteer either their time or materials can go ahead and get a hold of you, and they could help create an opportunity in their local area where there might not be one, or join forces with folks who are already doing such a thing, right?
Correct. Yes.
So is there a vetting process for this that you guys use? How do you, not that I want to complicate the situation you already have, but I mean, this is a question sometimes folks, when you pair individuals like this, what would somebody want to submit or need to submit to say, hey, I want to be a volunteer? What information would you want from them?
There's a form where you go to walkingrolling.org/volunteer, and there is a form that you fill out. You do not have to have skills to do everything. There will be a bunch of check boxes along there as to what your skills are. If it's painting, welding, 3D printing, wiring, light, sound, any type of skill. You just check the ones that you can do. And that way, if I have a request in your area, and, for example, if they want a fire truck, I know I'm going to need someone who can do sound, lights, possibly water.
We
have done one that actually squirted water before. So all those different things. And I'll look for the volunteers in that area that have those skills. And, I'll reach out to them and say, hey, I've got a child who wants a fire truck. And, that is one way. So don't think that you have to do it all. I do have some people who say, I will build it completely by myself. I don't need a team. Just give me a kid. And those guys are great. I mean, I've got one guy in Texas that has done some amazing costumes for us. And he every year he's like, who do you have for me this year? I'm ready to build another one.
That's fantastic, because this is so much. Oftentimes folks, we use the term special needs, but it's people who have above and beyond needs is really what it is. Out of the ordinary needs is really what it is. And so oftentimes you are either so financially strapped or so your time, talent, and treasure are just so committed to other things that you just can't come up with them to create these costumes. So this is where this volunteer organization helps so much. Either people who do have skills or have either one of the time, talent, or treasure to donate to somebody to get something they could get on for themselves. So thank you, Lon, so much for all that you do. I can't praise you and what you do in your work, not just for the connectivity to these individuals, to folks who need special attention because they have a special need, but how this affects and how this connects with everyday people, I don't want to use that term in a derogatory sense, but in folks who don't have to concern themselves with these challenges, who have the time and the opportunity to help somebody else overcome a challenge that they have. That is, to me, that is the heart of hearts and the best that any of us could ever do. So thank you, Lon.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to close it on out there. Once again, everybody, we're going to put all that social media down there. You can connect with Lon and his organization, walkingandrolling.org. You can volunteer. You can ask for a costume for yourself. If you have something to give, information, time, contacts, things like that, go ahead and get a hold of Lon. Lon would love to hear from you and tell you what he could do to help you help somebody else.
Late last year, December, we were given a $25,000 matching donation from an anonymous donor. And they have told us if we can raise $25,000 in 2022, they will match it up to that point. So any donations that you can give us this year will actually count as double. So we would love to have any donations to help us get more costumes for more kids.
So let's just go ahead and, because sometimes, we ask for money, sometimes we ask for time, sometimes we ask for talent. This would be one of those very specific situations where somebody really can put that treasure in and then double.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
So this is one time where we really would ask for somebody to go ahead and make that cash donation if that's available to you to offer up as help.
Yes,
man, that is fantastic. So I'm John E Avocado with the Purpose Your Passion podcast, and I can't thank Lon and his organization enough for purposing their passion and getting a lot of folks out there to do good. So until next time, we'll see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io.